Hello and welcome back to the Early Bar Football Podcast. We're like 35 minutes late, but it's fine. We were meant to go live at 6:30, but we're just busy with work and stuff because we are working people and we work hard. Anyway, we'll crack on to it. I think this is maybe episode 24. Who knows? I'm not keeping count, but I did try and count earlier. It's in the 20s or so. Anyway, today I'm joined by Ash. Hello, how's it going?
Hello, all good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I don't normally get asked how I am, but
we never ask you. That's what I picked up on previous podcasts, that no one ever asks how you are. So
I am well. We had a lovely.
very sad.
Yeah, I'm a bit hungry because I was gonna make dinner before we went on, but you came in and we started talking about F1 for about 25 minutes. So that was true. Good. That's true. But yeah, Jack's back. It's been a while. I can't remember who was managing which teams when you were last on the pod, but I imagine they've all changed.
Well, I think there's only one sacking when I was last on the podcast. So really? Quite a lot happened since, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was Watford was the only one, I think, last time.
Oh my
I might be wrong, but yeah, that was
so much has happened since then.
Yeah.
So we can dive right into that. And then Lynchy's also here. Lynchy, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. Very well. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was good, thank you. How was yours?
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. I went for a walk. I got my hair cut, and had a korfball game, which is nice. How was you were in London at the weekend, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I heard about your realization. I just remembered actually, your hair's the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is huge news coming out of the Early Bath pod today. So I went to a new barber's, right? And they said, they were like they finished it all, and they said, which way would you like your hair done? And I went, I sweep it to one side. And the barber was like, no, that's the wrong side because of my crown that I've got on my head. And he was like, you should do it the other way. And so now I am. And 26 years on this earth, I feel like I've been living a lie because I'm now sweeping my hair to the wrong side after 26 years. So
you do look different thing.
It's weird, isn't
it? Man.
Oh, God, I don't know if I like it or not. I don't want to be changed. I want to be the same. Yeah, I want to be the same man. Anyway, we'll talk football anyway and leave my identity crisis to the side. But as you can see by the banner, which I've accidentally left on from the pre-pod chat that we have, more managers have been sacked in the Premier League. So we're trying to figure out who's left in the last week. So I think we covered Nuno getting sacked. I don't think we've covered Conte going into Spurs. We've definitely not covered Dean Smith leaving Aston Villa and Daniel Farke leaving Norwich or getting sacked by Norwich. Have I missed any more there, lads? Or is that it? Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe coming in to Newcastle. Yeah. So, Ash, where would you like to start with all the managerial merry-go-round? I feel like if I just let you pick a starting point and we'll move on and we'll go on from there.
Oh, that's tough. I'm trying to think which is the most interesting. I was going to go with the most recent, but let's go Dean Smith.
Okay, let's start off with Dean.
We'll go chronologically. That doesn't make any sense.
Chronologically backwards.
Chronologically backwards. We'll start with Dean Smith. I think the perception is just from social media and all sorts that he's been quite unfairly treated by Aston Villa, and the idea, he's brought through the squad from the Championship. He did well to get them up because they were sort of in the mire under Steve Bruce, sort of not really going anywhere. Dean Smith managed to get them out of the Championship. They stabilised in the Premier League, and they've not done terribly this season. I mean, they've lost quite a lot of games, but then you've got to counter that by saying they've lost Jack Grealish, who's clearly their talisman, and they signed a lot of players, and we all know when you sign a lot of players, it takes time for them to bed in, and that can be difficult. On the other hand, I think there's a stat going around that Dean Smith has lost 18 games this year, which, if you think there's been a massive break in the season, that is quite a lot of games. And I think Aston Villa are a club that are looking to be in the top half of the table rather than the bottom, and therefore I think this starts the season where they've probably not had the worst fixtures as well. I think it's just sort of come to the point where they don't think Dean Smith can take them forward. And I think I would have been I would have given him slightly more time if I was the Aston Villa chairman. And I think this firing only makes sense if they're going to bring in someone else to take the club forward. If they're not sure who they're going to bring in and they're just sort of sacked him because, like you said, it's sacking season. Everyone's sacking someone, so we can sort of get it in, and it's not going to get as much press because of what's crazy stuff's going on in football. They don't really have someone to replace him. Then I don't think that's the right decision. If they're quick and they bring someone in, they're like, yes, this is the new guy, he's going to take us forward, then completely understand that decision. But we'll see what happens in the coming weeks, I guess.
It seems to be sacking season. I'd love to see the stats of this time, in the November international break, when managers are sacked from their clubs, because it always seems to be about this time of year. But anyway, it's an interesting point of who Villa could get in. I saw articles today of Steven Gerrard potentially. I think Roberto Martinez on that list. I spoke to an actual Aston Villa fan today, and he said potentially even Nuno. So the question to you, Jack, is who do you reckon Villa should get in?
I have absolutely no idea.
Good, very good. All right.
The only reason I say that is because Villa's a difficult job because they're a huge club, well supported.
Yeah.
And they are now they're back in the top flight. The expectations of them going back to the sort of 2004 sort of, when they were sort of teetering into the European places for that sort of team. They want to get back in that position. But you look at the managers that are available and there isn't much to pick from unless you try and poach from another team. Everybody's favourite at the moment used to be Potter. He's like the favourite for every job at Brighton. But I think he's got a good thing. So I don't think he's going to risk that unless it's an extraordinary opportunity. It is really, really tough to pick. I honestly think it might be a case of, like you said with Nuno, it might be a case of managers just swapping clubs. Managers that have been sacked recently literally just swapping places, Yeah. I don't see Bruce going to Villa again. That's not going to happen.
Oh, I imagine.
But bring him back.
I don't know. There could be. I'm trying to think of anybody that's left around really. That's Premier League level manager. It's not many.
Neil Warnock.
I would love to see him in the Prem. I really would. But
Thomas Frank. Do you reckon they could tempt Thomas Frank from Brentford to go manage Villa? I mean, they took Brentford's manager last time when they were in the Championship. Could they do something similar again?
I mean, it's progressive, isn't it? You look at the way he plays. I mean, it's the style that Villa want to play. But is it a step up or is it just a step sideways? Because I don't know. Like, he's a newly promoted manager, and it's these newly promoted teams seem to do well in the first season, and then it's the real test is the next year, isn't it? The second season, and whether they can actually do it. Because you find a lot of teams that newly promoted have one good year, and then they absolutely plummet the second. So I honestly don't know. It's such a great job, but such a bad job at the same time, because the expectation is so high, but it's not a bad team he's taken over. So like the Norwich, it's quite a difficult one for Norwich is a different sort of team because it's less expectation, but it's also a much less quality in the team. Yeah. So it's a balance between you have to try and find the right manager that can manage that sort of situation.
Yeah, indeed. And Lynchy, was the writing on the wall for Dean Smith? Do you think he should have got given more time? I think Ash said he lost 18 games this calendar year. I think Villa have lost 5 on the trot. It's a weird one, the calendar year thing, because I feel like obviously there was a big separation in the season when the season ended. I feel like, is it harsh to sort of compare last season and this season, given the break and stuff? Or I don't know, is that just how stats works nowadays? Anything that you can find to build the narrative of a manager's pretty crap or not? Is that just being used against him there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like you say, I think it's quite a difficult one. I think some fans, in terms of season over season, for instance, I know they had quite a poor second half of the season. Grealish was out for quite a while of that. And whether that should be taken into consideration with regards to sacking him this season, considering they've got new players in, they're still bedding in, and whether, the prior season's performance should be considered and obviously making that ultimate decision to sack him. Personally, I was a bit surprised, I think, that he was sacked. I feel like they probably should have given him a couple more games. Mainly because, they had a couple of difficult fixtures, like West Ham are flying at the moment. They beat them, obviously lost away to Arsenal. It's not exactly going to be always an easy fixture on paper. They did beat us last season at the Emirates, though, so maybe they're thinking of those performances against bigger teams last season. But also, seems like the board. I think it's this international break syndrome where the board see an opportunity, in the 2 weeks. Because a club like Aston Villa have probably got some international players, but I don't think their whole squad would be going away on international duty. So if they're lining up a manager, that manager's got 2 weeks now, an opportunity to work with those players for the next game. And I think that's what's happened to Dean Smith, really. But like Jack said, it's a big club. There's going to be a lot of pressure as soon as that manager comes in, and the potential replacements they're talking about. I don't know whether they would want to go there because of that reason. For instance, Steven Gerrard probably wants to try and win a second league title in a row. Rangers, I'm not sure why he'd want to leave Rangers midway through the season to go to Villa and potentially lose the job within 6 months if they're really fighting relegation. If he doesn't hit the ground running there. So yeah, I think overall it was harsh, but I think at the same time slightly less of a shock given that it's just because of the international break. If they had a fixture next Saturday, maybe they would have given him a bit more time because he can still work with the players. But I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Villa, how when Grealish left, and obviously we all thought that their signings on paper that they made in the summer did look really good. But I always look back at that when Tottenham sold Gareth Bale, and when they brought in like 5 or 6 players with the money they got for Bale, and they almost had too many options and didn't know their best team. I feel like Dean Smith was like that at Villa in the sense that he just had all of these attacking players they brought in. Buendia, they got Traore, El Ghazi, Danny Ings, Ollie Watkins, and he just didn't know his best team, and that he ultimately was, I think, partially his downfall.
And adding Bailey, who hasn't really hit the ground running, has he, for Villa? But it's a really interesting point, and I like the international break syndrome that you've just coined there. IBS, we'll call that. I can't think of IBS being used as a more well-known acronym in any other walk of life. But we'll make that happen. IBS, international break syndrome. But no, I think you've mentioned Steven Gerrard there. Very interesting one. I agree. I don't think if I were Steven Gerrard, I wouldn't want to leave Rangers mid-season. I think not that he has unfinished business there because he's currently doing the business. I wouldn't leave that sort of project of Rangers sort of midway for a very uncertain job with Villa. Because sort of as Ash said, what are they, and also Jack sort of touched on it, what are they actually, what's their aim? What's Villa's aim? A lot of people will say, we sold Grealish, let's just stay in the Premier League. A lot of them will say, let's finish mid-table, and more would say, we've spent all this money, let's try and push for European places, because, they were relatively close last year. They played really well, but that was obviously with Grealish. So I think there's a sort of disparity in expectation at Villa at the minute. I don't think, as a fan base, they know what they want, and the next manager's going to have a really tough job of trying to create a sense of this is what we're going for. It'd be interesting to see what Villa fans think about that. But then sort of more managers have come and gone. Let's talk about Eddie Howe at Newcastle. I think we all knew the manager that Newcastle would get in to replace Steve Bruce. We are still worried about Steve Bruce. Do we know what he's doing at the minute? He was watching golf, wasn't he, at some point?
I haven't seen cricket.
Cricket. Was it cricket?
Was it Dubai or something? Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope he's great. If you're watching. But Eddie Howe, what do you think, Ash? Is that the sort of name you were looking for Newcastle? Are you surprised, or are you sort of, yeah, that makes sense?
I think it's a good appointment. The only slight surprise I have with it is that Eddie Howe went there just because he didn't want to go to Celtic, which is obviously very far up north. He didn't enjoy being at Burnley, which is far up north, and now he's taking a job in Newcastle, which is also very far up north. And he sort of mentioned before that his family are all based down south, and he'd rather have a job down south. But I suppose when the big Saudi dollars come rolling through, his eyes lit up. But no, I think it's an interesting one because we just spoke about the sort of the pressure of going in at Villa and how it's a bit of a poison chalice because it's hard to meet that expectation because you don't necessarily have the quality of player to do that. Whereas it's a similar situation with Newcastle. Like, Newcastle are rubbish. Their players are rubbish. That's why they're bottom league and haven't won any games. And Eddie Howe is going in there with the expectation of most people, I think, that he should keep them up. At least the fans, anyway, expect to stay up, especially with the new owners and all these $1 million that they're expected to spend in January. But I think it's going to be a tough task for whoever comes in. But when it's, as well as being a tough task, it's a great opportunity, similar to the Villa situation. It's an opportunity for Eddie Howe to rebuild sort of his reputation and really kick on and show what he can do. Because effectively, he will eventually have a blank canvas at Newcastle if he survives this season to rebuild it in his image and his style of football. I think that's another good reason it's another good appointment from Newcastle because his style of football is good. I've said on this podcast before, Rafa, Steve Bruce, those turgid, boring style of football going. And I think the Newcastle fans want to see a better style of football, want sort of football that gets them off the feet more often. And I think Eddie Howe is a good manager to bring in. Also, I think they found out with Emery and maybe other feelers that they put out that getting a sort of elite level manager, given their current situation and where they are in the Premier League, wasn't going to be possible. No matter how much money you could throw at, elite manager, I don't think with the potential of managing the Championship, I don't think many managers would want to take that on. But I think Howe's a good appointment, but interested to see what the boys think.
Yeah. Jack, throwing this question over to you. Ed has said in the pod before that Eddie Howe's sort of one of those managers that you'd like to see given a bit of money to spend and sort of build a team in his own image. Obviously at Bournemouth, he had very limited resources. And that at Newcastle, he'll be given those resources. So how do you reckon he'll actually do? Crystal ball it. Do you reckon Eddie Howe will, get Newcastle winning a game for one? They're the only team in the Premier League that haven't won a game this season.
I think he'll do well, but I don't know if he'll do well enough to meet the expectations of the ownership. Because I know a lot of people think they're going to win the league in 3 years. That's not going to happen. There's too many big teams in this league for that. To them to do that. So it's you're looking at a 10, maybe even a 15-year project. So I think he will do well, but I don't think it will be an appointment that will be very, very long because I think the expectations will become too high. It will meet an expectation each season, and I think it will get to a point where it will be unobtainable, even with the unlimited, not unlimited resources, but the massive resources they've got. I think it's still going to take quite a few years to get to, maybe even get to Champions League football. I mean, they're quite a ways off winning the league, but I think they're quite a few years off even getting into Champions League, qualifying in the normal spaces in the Premier League. So, but I think he will do well. Like I agree with Barnes. It's exactly the sort of manager they want. They're a massive club like Villa, and they want to play better football. And he's, we know what Bournemouth were like. For 4 or 5 seasons, they didn't finish amazingly high, but they did play some very good stuff, and they beat some big teams. So I think if he can get, he can get some good players in there and get the right system, I think you'll get, as soon as you get the fans back on side as well, I think it'll create a bit more of a better atmosphere. I think they'll be quite a good team, but it will take a while to get them to the very top. I think
it will absolutely take them a while to get to the top because they are literally bottom and haven't won a game, and it's November. They are as far away from being a good team as it could possibly be. Lynchy, Ash touched on Unai Emery there, and Unai Emery did not want to join Newcastle United. Are you surprised by that, or do you think that's just where Newcastle are at the minute? They're not going to be able to attract that sort of elite level manager until someone does a job, and is Eddie Howe that person to sort of start the process?
Yeah, I mean, I was initially surprised with the link with Unai Emery in the first place. I mean, as him, I don't know why he'd want to leave Villarreal, where I think the fans really like him. They just won the Europa League and a stable position in the Champions League. Like Ash said, you're running the risk of going to that team and potentially getting relegated and being in the Championship in 6 months' time. And you'd look back and just think, like, why did I do this? I think it's just too much for a risk for a manager like that right now, where Newcastle are. It'd be a completely different story if they're mid-table, comfortable, and just happened to want to push on and they sat their manager in different circumstances. But it didn't surprise me that Unai Emery declined the job. I think it is quite a risky one. But like Ash said, it's sort of, I think Eddie Howe's got a tiny bit of a point to prove. I mean, I was a bit surprised in terms of the appointment from the stance of he's a sort of a manager you look at to build like a project around over a number of years, rather than let's turn to Eddie Howe to try and get us out of a relegation scrap, which Newcastle are in. It might take a while for the players to learn his methods, to get used to how he wants them to play. And they don't really have that time. Considering how badly they're playing this season, they haven't even won a game. They just need to get wins under their belt as quick as they can. I mean, I think Newcastle's games will be much more exciting than they have been. Eddie Howe will try and get them to play free-flowing football. But I feel that even with Bournemouth, even when they were doing well mid-table, they still conceded like 65, 70 goals a season. They nearly averaged 2 goals conceded a game. Obviously, skewed towards one games potentially, where they might have conceded 5 or 6 or something. And that is Newcastle's problem at the moment. Their defence, I'd say, more than their attack. They've got decent attacking players like Callum Wilson and St. Maximin when they're both fit. But the problem is the defence, and I don't know, Eddie Howe's not the manager, I think, first of all, when you're in a relegation battle, to look to shore up the defence. Whereas I guess the Emery appointment, or the intention to try and get him as manager, they're probably looking at it from that sense because he's much more of a defensive coach. But I think it's going to be an interesting one because I think Eddie Howe's more of a long-term manager when you're in the club's in more of a stable position compared to where they are right now, bottom of the league without a win and leaking goals left, right and centre.
I'd be inclined to agree with you there. And talking about teams that leak goals left, right and centre, Norwich finally won a game at the weekend and then Daniel Farke got sacked. I mean, Ash, how do you feel about that? It's just very harsh, isn't it, right?
I feel vindicated because I said on this podcast maybe a week ago or a couple of weeks ago, I don't know how that Daniel Farke was living this charmed life where no one was criticising him, even though they were getting absolutely battered every week. And am I surprised that they've sacked him? No. As Lynchy said, it's probably the IBS. The international break has come, and they probably got time to sack him, so that's probably why they left it until now. Maybe they've got maybe it's a situation where they've sacked him already knowing. Apparently, they've already got a short list of 3 managers. I think it's Lampard, Dean Smith, and
Hasenhuttl.
That's it, Hasenhuttl. I can't see Hasenhuttl, but it is interesting to see Hasenhuttl on that list because that suggests that maybe he is gettable. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any interest in him if he was just impossible, which is kind of an interesting side plot. But I'm not surprised Farke has been sacked, and I think it's the right decision. Maybe could have taken it earlier. And I think Norwich play Newcastle quite soon, so that'll be a very interesting fixture. I was just about to say before going back to Newcastle that they have Burnley, Norwich, and Brentford in 3 of the next 4 fixtures. I think they got Brentford at home after the international break, which, bearing in mind, Brentford have loads of injuries. This could be a crucial part of the season and crucial in Eddie Howe's career at Newcastle. Because if he starts well, gets a couple of wins under his belt, then they'll probably kick on from there. If he starts poorly and they lose these games, then they've got a lot tougher fixtures to come over Christmas. That could be tough. But going back to Norwich, I'm not surprised Farke got sacked. Norwich been awful this season and deserved it. So I was glad to see them win, though. I don't think they've been quite as bad as maybe some people have suggested. But he's gone.
He's gone. A great win for Norwich. But Jack, are they going to stay up?
I very much doubt it.
That's so diplomatically put.
I don't want to say that they're definitely going to go down because knowing my luck, they'll stay up somehow by some miracle. But not to be. I mean, they are probably one of the weakest teams in the Premier League, I think, for quite a few years. I mean, they've got some good players, but they're just similar problem to Newcastle. They've just got too many high-level Championship players and not enough Premier League level players to actually compete at this level, I think. And I think the problem is they haven't really changed the team. They've already been relegated once with pretty much the same team, and you could argue it's a weaker team they had than the first time they got relegated. Yeah. So, I can't see there's much hope for them. But, I mean, it is, like I said, it's a good club. They have a good academy. They always bring some good young players. So it's an attractive opportunity for like a young coach or a coach who wants to play football, but because there's literally no pressure really, because the expectation is they're going to go down, so he can literally pretty much play whatever football he wants to, and try and bring through some young players and get them kicking again for next year, pretty much. So,
do you reckon they'll get more or less points than Derby's? Was it they got 11, didn't they?
The ill-fated season.
The ill-fated season.
So what are they on now?
They're on 5.
5 points in November. Yeah. That's not bad. I mean, Derby's 11 that's quite ridiculous, isn't it? In over a big season. I think they will get higher than 11, but I don't think much higher.
Okay. Lynchy, you heard the names that Ash put forward there as potential replacements. What do you think about that? Do you think Norwich are looking in the right place for a replacement for Daniel Farke?
I mean, I think the Raphael Hasenhüttl one is a good intention because I think he's quite a good manager. Whenever he's come under a bit of pressure at Southampton, they seem to sort of put a good few string of results together. Well, for instance, the last few results, and they kept 3 clean sheets in 4. But I don't see why he would leave for Norwich. Southampton have got way more resources than Norwich, and they're in a much better position in the league. Dean Smith, I think would be a decent appointment. I mean, he's got championship experience. Maybe they're looking ahead to the guaranteed relegation, as Jack alluded to, next season, and the championship experience Dean Smith's got. And then was the other one Lampard?
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of similar to Eddie Howe. I think he's got a point to prove, but again, if they do realistically think they have they must do, because they're getting rid of Farke because they realistically think they can get a manager in who can keep them in the division. And I'm not sure Frank Lampard would. He doesn't have that experience, and he's more of a long-term manager. I think, like building the team, building the philosophy of how he wants the team to play, rather than turn around and get the results sort of back to the wall kind of performance. I mean, Chelsea were not under Lampard as well. They leaked quite a lot of goals, didn't they? They weren't exactly defensively sound, and Norwich have been leaking goals this season, left, right, and centre. So, I think. To be honest with you, I think Hasenhüttl is unrealistic, and Frank Lampard's probably not the right choice. So I think out of the 3, I think Dean Smith would probably be the best one, and it could prove Aston Villa wrong. And I can take a team if you gave me an opportunity. I can actually improve players. Because like Ash and Jack said, like Norwich, they have got a championship side. I mean, when you look at the back 4, is it Tim Krul, Grant Hanley? Like Jack said, those players were there when they got relegated last 2 years ago. And they're playing them again. I don't know what they expect, really. But yeah, I think Dean Smith would be the most appropriate one. But like we spoke about earlier with the Newcastle situation and Aston Villa, like there's not many managers available, so there's a limited bunch unless they're trying to take it from other teams.
I do think Barnes is right there. There's something a bit fishy with that Hasenhüttl thing, because there must be something, because he only signed a new deal like last year, didn't he? I think a new contract at Southampton. So. Unless it's his agent like stirring some up to try and get him some more money. I don't know, because that's just a really strange thing, isn't it? Like a strange one to be linked. Or it could be complete rubbish, but usually there is something behind it, isn't there, normally? So
well, he's been linked with a lot of jobs, isn't he? Like I think he even might have been linked with the Villa job. And there's no smoke without fire, which, like you said, Jack, maybe the agent is sort of putting out there that Hasenhüttl would like to move on from Southampton, where he's been, constrained financially, I think. There's just one more point before we move on. It's interesting how Norwich and Newcastle are on exactly the same points, but I feel our expectation is that Norwich are doomed and are terrible, and Newcastle will get out of it. Is that fair? But they're probably just as bad as each other.
They are.
That sort of shows that Newcastle are in big trouble, because they're 5 points off getting out of the relegation, and there's not that many. I know we've said before that this year there's quite a lot of bad teams in the Premier League. But if Newcastle stay up, someone quite established in the Premier League is going to get relegated.
I think though the only difference I can see is that they are a similar group of players in terms of quality, but Newcastle have managed to find a way to stay up with the same group for the last 3 years. So it's actually proof that they have the ability to do it. Whereas with Norwich, it's proven wrong last time that they couldn't do it. So I get what you're saying, but I think there's a little bit. It's not much quality difference. There's a little bit more quality in Newcastle's squad, in my opinion, than there is in Norwich's squad. But we'll soon see. I don't know who you guys think are going to be the 3 going down. Do you have any views on that? Or, I mean, mine definite 2 would be Watford and Norwich. I don't know about the third. The third's a very hard one to pick. For me. Yeah,
maybe Leeds. I'm not sure. Leeds are just not really hitting the heights, but I feel like, I don't know, it's different. It's really difficult. I feel like Norwich, Watford, got Burnley.
I think Burnley still. I think Burnley. I think Burnley was so lucky against Chelsea not to lose that game. And they'll put it that it's Sean Dyche's grit and determination. Like he managed to get a draw. Chelsea missed so many chances. Like,
they did.
It's got nothing to do with Burnley being good. I don't know. I think Watford and Norwich. Do
you think Brentford will get pulled in it?
I think Watford are doomed.
I don't think Brentford will be pulled in it.
Brentford lost 4 on the spin, haven't they?
I think they'll be okay when they get players back from injury, similar to Leeds.
Yeah,
but interestingly, lads, of the current bottom 5 in the Premier League, 4 of them have sacked their managers. Who is the one team that hasn't?
Burnley.
It is Burnley. Burnley, the only team not to
sack
their
signed
manager.
a new contract, didn't he, recently?
Probably, yeah.
I think
it's just an interesting one. It's a very interesting one. But we'll talk about. We're a bit late to the party on Conte, but I just want to touch on him very quickly. There was the United Tottenham game was dubbed El Sacico by many tabloid newspapers and social media peoples. And Ollie won. Man United won the game. Ollie stayed. United won. Spurs lost. Nuno got sacked. They've got Conte in. Do you think Spurs are the real winners of El Sacico here?
Yeah, there's a lot of Manchester United won the battle, Spurs won the war, sort of chat going around. I suppose they did in a sense that it triggered the sacking of Nuno, and I think we've spoken on the pod before that Nuno maybe wasn't the right picking your 5th choice manager puts them in a very difficult position, especially when they play quite boring football. And there was already the frustration from last year of Spurs fans that didn't like the football under Mourinho, and then you go and put another guy in who plays just as, if not more, boring football. And again, as I said, he was 5th choice. It doesn't really instill confidence. He's a bit of a dead man walking, Nuno. I feel a bit sorry for him. But Conte, let's face it, is a great appointment. I think Jack mentioned earlier, what managers are out there. There was always that one manager, Conte, that everyone would have wanted if they could have got him. Apart from Manchester United, apparently, though, he hasn't got enough Manchester United DNA, unfortunately, for that job. So wouldn't be able to get that. But I think it's a good important appointment for Spurs. I'm surprised that he went to them because, let's face it, they're not probably the stature of club that Conte would normally go to, although they've got a huge stadium and Levy's probably promised him a lot of money. But yeah, I was surprised to see Conte go there. But obviously for Spurs, it's great. But it'd be interesting to see, Spurs players have got other good managers like Mourinho sacked. I think there's a sort of an assumption from the wider media and like Twitter and places like that Conte's just going to go in, do well, and they're going to, straight away get top 4 or top 6. Might not go that way. Like these Tottenham players have let down managers before. So I'm not sure. His record would suggest that he'd do well, and he's a great manager. But I think he's going to have to sign some players and change some things at Spurs to really get them rolling.
What I really like is whenever any new manager comes into Tottenham Hotspur, there's always the article of who will revive Dele Alli's career.
Yeah,
Dele Alli's career is not going to get revived. He's a very average player. His attitude, there's obviously something wrong with his attitude because managers have come in, great managers, and no one's sorted him out. He obviously had
Carl Robinson sorted him out.
That's true. Carl Robinson, get him to Oxford. Dele Alli in January.
I've got the whole budget of Oxford in one transfer.
How dare you?
One player signed on.
Jack, Barnes just said there, Conte was, it's quite a good coup there for Tottenham. What do you think it was that, got Conte at Tottenham? What did Daniel Levy say to him to say, come here, sign for Tottenham?
I don't know what he'd give him. Something, but because there's like Barnes touched on, they haven't been brilliant, and I honestly think that's probably the best managerial appointment they could have ever got. Honestly,
in their dreams, absolutely, I agree.
But I don't think there's any manager out there that's on that same level that wouldn't cost them an absolute fortune or would even be willing to go there. So I think he's done an absolute blinding job to get him. I don't know how he's done it because. You know what happened with Chelsea when he took over? They were 14th in the league.
It was that terrible season they had, wasn't it? Yeah.
And then he got them into the Champions League, didn't he? And then the following year they won the title. So I sort of agree with Barnes. I don't think this season is going to be anything particularly special. I mean, they'll probably make Europe or maybe Champions League if they have a really good end of the season. But next year, if he stays around, I think they could. If they keep Kane and keep Son, they've got serious, good 2 players to build on there, and they could really do some damage with. You can see with, some of the other team last season and this season as well. Some of the teams they were beating, they did I think they beaten Man City twice at home, haven't they? In the last 2 seasons.
I think so.
I mean, they've got some world class players in there. They just need to fill the little gaps. And I think with Conte, look at Victor Moses. That's the example I always use with Conte. Took him from like a Wigan athletic, winger, and made him into a right wing back, and he was absolutely tremendous for like 2 seasons for Chelsea, and they were absolutely brilliant, weren't they? I mean, so I mean, some of these players that you say that haven't been performing, he could literally miracle work. He could. You never know. Ali's career could be revived. You never know.
Dele Alli as a right wing back is what Jack Ollie feels.
You never know.
Right now.
You never know.
Fantastic. Lynchy picked. Lynchy's the Arsenal fan here. Tottenham now have Conte, Pep's at City, Klopp's at Liverpool. Who else am I looking at here? Brighton have got Potter, obviously. But United have Ollie, Arsenal have Arteta. Are you scared that all these good teams have, obviously not Brighton maybe, and I'm being a bit flippant there, but the big teams have big managers, and now United and Arsenal are sort of stuck with club legends who have the DNA?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, what I'd say is like Tottenham, less so like Man City, Liverpool, but Tottenham, they don't really have like a philosophy or way. Yeah. I feel like at least Arsenal, we've shown this season, we've sort of got a plan and like a strategy for the future. We've got the youngest team in the Premier League, like youngest starting at 11. You can see Arteta trying to build something at least. Whereas like, I feel like Conte, as good of a manager he is, I can't see him being at Tottenham for more than 2 or 3 years. That's he wasn't at Chelsea for that long, was he? Wasn't at Juventus, Inter Milan 1 or 2 seasons after winning the league. So even though I do think it is a very good appointment, a very experienced manager, and he will improve the side, I think. Tottenham still aren't showing like a clear strategy or vision. I mean, really since Pochettino left, these sort of random. Well, Mourinho was obviously a great manager, but at the time he wasn't at his peak, was he? Nuno obviously was a random appointment. And then they had to get Conte in now. So, I mean, it does show that Tottenham consider track like big name managers. But I'm reasonably happy with Arsenal at the moment because I feel like at least we're showing a clear vision for the future. And, we're not going what we used to do where we sign ex-Chelsea rejects with mid-30s. Like we're going down a path and Arteta sort of spearheading that as such, getting in young players, playing a certain way of football, and it's slowly coming to fruition in the last 10 or so games, whereas Tottenham, as much as a good appointment of Conte, they're not really showing that. Their squad I think it's quite a poor squad, really, when you look at it. They're starting 11. I think Conte would want to make major changes to that in the January transfer window next summer. And I think yesterday showed that, it's not going to be an easy job, coming in. I think everyone thought, Kane's going to be backfiring straight away. They're going to change, at the flick of a switch after Nuno's gone, but they drew 0-0 yesterday. They could have lost to Everton in his first Premier League game, so it's going to be still a difficult job. Mourinho went there, didn't work out. When Mourinho signed, everyone was like, "What a great appointment!" They're going to be back challenging for the title again. It could go that way with Conte. You just don't know. But yeah, overall, I think it's a good appointment. As an Arsenal fan, slightly jealous, but not overly.
There you go. Yeah, and to be honest, I was going to say this when we talk about Aston Villa. But apparently John Terry's been touted to be Aston Villa manager. And it brings me on to this whole subgenre of football management where if you were a good footballer in your day, you're automatically a good manager, which I hate. Because realistically, if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't score a goal in 1999, he'd be nowhere near the Man United job. I just feel like there's this whole, Lampard obviously got the Chelsea job because he was a former good Chelsea player. It's this whole thing, and if I could change one thing in football, it's that whole narrative of if you were a good player for this club, you're obviously going to be the greatest manager to ever have lived for this club, and you're going to bring us all the success. That's just me ranting. There's no point to this. There's just me saying I want James Constable to be the Oxford United manager. I think that's it. That was just me ranting. Anyway, we'll move on because we talked about sacked managers for 40 minutes nearly. We'll move on to the Premier League and what's happened on the weekend. It was obviously Manchester Derby, West Ham, a huge win for them in terms of the Premier League. We could talk about David. I know Ash Barnes loves talking about David Moyes, so maybe we can start on that because you also said you didn't watch any football this weekend apart from the West Ham Liverpool game. So I think it's only fair that we start at West Ham. So what did you think of the game? And West Ham are third in the Premier League now. Liverpool lost for the first time in 20-odd games, 25, I think, games it is. So are West Ham potential Premier League champions, Ashley Barnes?
Is this your thumbnail for the pod? I can see it now.
It was clickbait. I needed something clickbaity
This is
for the
clickbait.
views.
I mean, they're probably more likely to win it than Manchester United, and you know, they had David Moyes a few years ago, and he was, I think, all their fans would say that he didn't do very well there, and he was an extremely unglamorous appointment. But yeah, he's doing bits under West Ham, and I think, yeah, we got to applaud Moyes, because a lot of people thought he was finished. I mean, even when I saw him at Sunderland, saw him at Sociedad being sort of clueless and having poor times there, you really thought this is the end for Moyes. It's only with these kind of managers, it sort of only seems to go one way, and that's down. So I think you've got to give Moyes a lot of credit for sort of reigniting his career and pushing West Ham to where this is probably the best West Ham have ever been. I mean, throughout our lives anyway. I've only ever remember West Ham sort of being nearest to the bottom of, sometimes getting, you know, just into the top half of the league, but mostly being around the bottom of the table, you know, fighting relegation. So to see them, you know, I know a lot's been said about the stadium, but they're in a big stadium. They've got really good players. They got a manager who clearly the players obviously get on with, who respect him and listen to him. And they play actually quite like simple, straightforward football, but it seems to be very effective. And I think they've just they're in a really good, like managers say, it's a present. They're in a good moment. You know what I mean? They're doing well. They're on a roll. And yeah, all credit to Moyes. I was going back to a few pods ago again when we had that manager one, and Owen and Leif were saying that Ollie was a better manager than Moyes.
Really hasn't aged well, has it?
It's not aged. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I would say nothing about that. Jack, did you watch any Premier League? I mean, I'll open the question to the West Ham game and how you think about West Ham and Liverpool. Did you watch that game?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
What do you think about the potential Aaron Cresswell red card? Did you think it was or not?
As an ex-defender, I would say no, because I don't think the intention was there to hurt him, or it was always intention to get the ball. But in the modern day sort of rules, I'm surprised he didn't get sent off after a VAR review. I'll be honest, because it was high, and he sort of did make contact with his shin. I think it helped him that it was 8 minutes into the game, or it was 8 minutes or 12 minutes. It was very early on in the game. So I think that sort of helped him that it was very early. I think if it was slightly later in the game, he might have been in a bit of trouble. Did it affect the game? It obviously would have made it a bit tighter, but I think it would have been a shame if he did get sent off. You know, looking at it, you know, retrospectively, how good a game it was, it'd have been a shame if they'd went down 10 men that early, because I think it would have made it a lot more difficult for West Ham to win that game. So,
very interesting. Literally, did you watch this game? Oh no, Jack, you carry on.
No, that's right.
Cut you off midpoint there.
I'm very surprised, because Liverpool, honestly, before that game, I think they said probably they were on form the best team in the world, I thought. And you look at the rest of the Premier League, I didn't think there was many teams that could really beat them on their current form. But fair play to Moyes and West Ham, because they were all brilliant. Not all 11 players were absolutely brilliant. So they did deserve it as well. They played really well.
Yeah. And Lynch, we talked about the sort of Derby's record of 11 points being potentially beaten. Just shows how bad Derby were that season. I think it always seems to happen for me when a team the last team loses their unbeaten run in a Premier League season. Just goes to show how, when Arsenal did the invincible season, just how much it takes to actually go through a season unbeaten. And, you know, you could argue that maybe this Liverpool side is better than the Arsenal invincible side. I don't know. They're two very different sides, obviously. But the question is, do you think another team would sort of match the invincible season? And could this Liverpool side do it maybe next year?
I think it's going to be very difficult. I think the main difference now is the Premier League, I feel like, is even more competitive than it was. Really, anyone can beat anyone in this Premier League, whereas I feel like, not taking anything away from the Arsenal Invincibles team, obviously, as an Arsenal fan, I feel like there was the top four around that era, wasn't there? And there was a much bigger drop off, I feel, in competitiveness between sort of like what's other leagues in Europe are now. You have a much bigger drop off between the top teams and the lower teams, whereas now teams are way more competitive. And even a game like Norwich versus Brentford, for even like anyone can beat anyone. I mean, I don't think anyone expected that result, and no one expected yesterday for West Ham to win as good as form as they were going into the game. Like you said, this Liverpool team, while the whole squad isn't it's not like a squad like Man City's, for instance, in terms of depth, but the starting 11 Liverpool team, I still think it's probably the best starting 11 in the league. That when you line up their first choice, I think it's testament to David Moyes, and I mean, I guess West Ham giving him a chance. Like Ash said, most people wrote him off when he went there, and they didn't expect him to get the job. And with time and a bit of space in terms of not being put under significant pressure when they might have been going through a bit of a bad patch with him, what it can do. And it's quite refreshing, I really think, because I think obviously in a lot of our top 4 predictions on the podcast, it was mainly just the big top 4 teams, and seeing a team like West Ham actually potentially disrupt that, and they really could actually get a top 4 spot this season. It's quite good. It just makes the league more exciting overall. I did enjoy Arsenal Twitter yesterday, because they always have this thing, Invincibles Day, every year. When the last team who haven't lost the game yet loses, and it just goes all over Twitter. And happy Invincibles Day. So
happy Invincibles Day. Happy Invincibles Day to Dan Lynch and Arsenal fans. And Arsenal 6 points off the top, which is good for a team that we're going to get relegated in September.
Yeah,
I know. I can't believe it, considering we lost to Man City 5-0, and Chelsea, and now we're I think like 3 points off Man City or something. Chelsea.
There you
go. With West Ham, do you reckon win the this season's West Ham or the Payet 15-16 West Ham? Because that was a particularly good West Ham team, wasn't it? I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because
this West Ham, I think
this one. I think this one's more of a team. They're more of a team. Like they play more as a unit. I feel like that team, they still looked for Payet, and when they needed someone, they looked towards him. I think this team's more of a collective effort. Even though, like, for instance, they've got standout players like Antonio, I feel like Fornals, Rice, Souček, they've got like a whole collective unit who they can rely on more consistently than that team. But it's close between the two. Yeah,
because Payet he's obviously the standout that year, but they were, I don't know where they finished in the end. I think it was like 6th or 7th, wasn't it? But they had a particularly good year for West Ham, considering like that before that they were sort of finishing bottom half, weren't they?
They finished 7th.
I think it was Bilic. 7th. That's not too bad. Yeah, I think it was Bilic. Yeah,
Bilic.
And was it Saka? Was it Saka there up front as well? The
Afro Saka, Emmanuel Emenike, Enna Valencia, Andy Carroll. They are big. They are houses of players. Those guys. And Victor Moses is there as well, obviously.
Adrian in goal, was it?
Of course, and Darren Randolph and Raphael Spiegel as well. His birthday is the 19th of December, 1992. Just off the top of my head, obviously. But anyway, fantastic scenes. Barnes, did you watch any more football over the weekend? And would you like to talk about any more Premier League results that caught your eye?
I did not, but I suppose we should probably talk about the Manchester derby.
I'll touch on it.
I'll leave the other boys to talk about Ollie and Manchester United, because I am sick of it. We've talked to death about it on this podcast, or I have anyway. I'll just talk about Manchester City. They were really, really good. They looked so impressive and just completely in control of the game, and I think they really needed that result, because after the Crystal Palace game, I think even Pep, he wasn't coming under pressure, obviously. I'm not saying that. I just think for their title challenge, they really, really needed to win and make a statement there. And that's exactly what they did in that game. So I think it was really important for Manchester City to win that game. And they put in a great performance. I don't know what the other boys think about Manchester United being terrible.
Well, we've exhausted that topic. But anyway, I think if United say that, if United won the Man United if Man United won the derby, they would have been level on points with City. So that's an interesting one. Jack, what football caught your eye this weekend in the Premier League or elsewhere? It's an open book now. I don't care.
Palace.
Oh, okay.
The only reason I talk about Palace is because they did get hammering before the season started on this podcast. To be fair to them, not just Ed, but I think everybody in this podcast were sort of thinking they're going to go down or they're going to have a terrible season. But fair play, because they have been brilliant. They have really been good. Like, Conor Gallagher is, I think, I'm amazed that he's like developed so quickly, and I can't see him being at Palace, or well, I can't see him being sent out on loan again after this season. I generally think he's going to be in and around that Chelsea team, if not sold to somebody else, because I mean, there's people been even mentioning his name in the England setup, senior team, which is that's a big group of players to come into, for someone of his age. But I think, when you watch him, he's been tremendous. Among all the other players. Well, I mean, Benteke. I mean, I thought he was finished. I honestly thought that his Premier League days were finished. But since under Vieira, he's looked like a different player. It really has. And
Vieira's really taken my great players are crap managers whole narrative upside down, hasn't it? So let's cut that bit out.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that one definitely caught my eye. I mean, Wolves aren't great, are they? I mean, they're sort of a solid mid-table team. But Palace have exceeded, I think, everybody's expectations on this podcast, definitely. And I think with that team, I think they're looking quite good. And they're playing an attractive style of football, which is as well was quite refreshing, because you think of the Palace of previous years. Yeah, it was quite a negative style, and it basically relied on Zaha, bit of magic to win them games or to get points. But now they're not as reliant on him. So they could certainly do. I certainly think they could scare a few big teams as well. They beat City last week. I think a few of the other teams, they really could give them a good game. So.
Yeah, an early Bath apology to Crystal Palace. I know when it was the Brighton Palace derby a few weeks back, I know a lot of Brighton fans on Twitter afterwards said, it was actually quite refreshing to play a decent Crystal Palace team, a team that actually decided to play football. And no offense to Roy Hodgson, but they were kind of stale under Roy Hodgson. As you said, Jack, it was just sort of will Wilfred Zaha do something good this game? No, then Crystal Palace will probably lose or draw or whatever it is. So Crystal Palace definitely turned a corner, and we all wrote Patrick Vieira off. So really sorry to Big Paddy V there. Lynchy, what about you? I know you were away, but did anything in the Premier League sort of get your attention?
Yeah, I think it was a more muted weekend than previous ones. I'll touch on Man U really quickly. Obviously, I know we have exhausted the topic, but I don't know. I feel like it just wasn't a surprise at all. Like Man City just went there and just completely dominated them. I feel like there was a couple of murmurs before the game where Man U could really turn up here. Like they could really put in a performance. Derby, and like Ash said, Man City just completely dominated from start to finish. I mean, I think whilst Man City did really they needed to win that. I mean, sure, I think Man U needed it just as much, if not more. They are in dire straits now. I mean, the whole atmosphere around the club could have changed if they did win that game on Saturday, but it was just so poor and lackluster. Like Ash said, just start to finish. Similar to the Chelsea game when Man City went away. They needed the win, didn't they? I think Chelsea went into that game unbeaten. Yeah. Man City might have lost or drew a game before that. And they just had to win that, and they just completely dominated Chelsea from start to finish as well. Just shows how far apart they are in terms of their quality. I sort of link into what Jack said as well, that obviously very boring international fixtures of England, Albania and San Marino. But I don't know, when I looked at the squad, I was a bit disappointed that Southgate didn't give a few more players like Conor Gallagher. Well, I know today Smith Rowe's come in because a couple of players pulled out, but as an Arsenal fan, I was quite surprised that he's not giving players like that an opportunity, considering the games we've got. Albania and San Marino, surely they're the perfect opportunities to bring some potentially new players in. It's not going to be there's not like Poland away, for instance, quite a tough. They are like Albania at home and San Marino away. Perfect opportunity to bring in perfect opportunity to bring in some new caps or some players who are playing quite well. For instance, like Connor Cody and Tyrone Mings. I know they've got experience. I know they've got experience with the England squad. They went to the Euros with them, for instance. But as an Arsenal fan, I was quite surprised that Ben White didn't get at least an opportunity to be in the squad. I was quite surprised Smith Rowe, before the injuries and they had to pull out, that he wasn't in the squad. Conor Gallagher as well, I think, is worth a shout. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like we looked upon Southgate before as a manager who always gave players the opportunity if they were on form. Their league form would always be reflected by them getting an international call-up. But I don't know. feel like that's slightly changing now. I don't know. Yeah, it's like slowly creeping into my mind, thinking, "Oh, is he just picking the same players most times?" You know.
I can't believe Tyrone Mings is back in that England squad. I can't believe it.
It's a possible job, though, isn't it, with Southgate? I was thinking, when you look at the players, I don't think there's ever been an England manager who's been so blessed with so much talent in one group.
Yeah.
You know, like usually you have like, you know, we've had generations of, you know, Matt Upson and people like that, and you think we're literally picking the bare bones of English players, but there's so much quality in every area, isn't there?
Lewis Dunk plays at centre back and in goal as well. Like, he can play two positions.
That was another thing that really drove me nuts about the football on Saturday, that Lewis Dunk was in goal and they didn't even have a shot.
Yeah.
How can you not even have a shot?
How?
I mean, John Joe Shelby an absolute rocket on him. Yeah. Why didn't he have a shot?
He just dinks it into the corner of the 18-yard box. They just head it clear. He's got to shoot. Like, no one's going to blame him.
Yeah, no one would blame him, would he, at all? Like,
I understand having a shot against a centre-back who's now gone in goal. Literally just put the gloves on, you know, just test him.
The inner workings of John Joe Shelby. That's a whole different topic.
I'm just upset that Jack's disrespected Matt Upson. He scored a great header against Germany. He leapt like a salmon. You know, he just didn't come down. He just let him. He just stayed there for like 2 seconds. I just nodded it in. Great player.
Apologies to Matthew.
There's Jay Bothroyd. There's like an endless list of graveyard England players.
Did Jermaine Beckford get a call up maybe once?
I don't know.
Maybe, who
knows? No idea. Every man and their dog around that era got a call up. I think
Yeah.
Championship strikers are in and around it, didn't they? So. Fantastic. I know Lynchy mentioned England. The only one that stood out for me, well, not the only one, but one of the few that stood out as well. I don't know if you mentioned him, was Tomori.
Macy's doing so good, aren't they?
Very surprised he didn't get called up because he's been brilliant. And he scored at the weekend, didn't he, in the derby, Milan derby. Really, really surprised. Like you said, there's the same sort of players that you don't really need in them games. You just sort of think you just give him a try and try him and Stones out centre back, or him and Maguire, or you know, have him as in a 3 and see if he can play in a 3. You know, it's just sort of them games you need to do that with, and not pick, because Conor Cody I don't think deserves it really. Wolves have been not that good. I mean, Aston Villa have been pretty crap. So
Mings got dropped, didn't he, by Smith? Yeah.
Exactly.
Conor Cody's been okay, and he's part of the furniture. Wolves haven't conceded many goals this season, so I agree that Tomori and Ben White are better players, and I'd rather have them in, but I'm not that annoyed about that. The Mings one is bizarre. Like literally said, he got dropped by. He can't even get into Aston Villa's team, and he's only back in because of the suspension. And then he's getting picked ahead of Ben White, who's been in great form, and Tomori, who's, in my opinion, is probably one of the best centre backs we have, and he doesn't even get in the squad. Tyrone Mings gets in there.
So you even got Maguire, who's been he's never going to not get picked, but like he's been in awful form for Man United. He doesn't even look fit. Do you even need to pick him for these games? Like, surely Man United probably prefer him to stay at Man U, train with the rest of the group, and work on his fitness for the next 2 weeks. Like, do England even need to call him? That's also another opportunity, another reason to give an opportunity to like these players we mentioned. You know,
we could. I'm sure when we pod during the international break, we can dissect this even more. Because I know Barnes, you've touched upon England players being a bit crap for their clubs this season. So I'm sure we'll touch on that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Did anyone else want to bring anything non-football related, if you want, to the table? Barnes, did you want to talk about the pedestrianisation of Whitney Town Centre or anything like that?
You nearly said Norwich then, didn't you?
I did.
You went full Partridge.
I did a full Partridge.
Yeah.
Bill.
I thought you'd want to talk about that, Tang.
I think that's what he's trying to sneak it in by getting you to say Barnes so you can talk about it.
I have no opinion. I'm on the fence.
You are on the fence. No, let's. I don't want to rile up the people of Whitney and the small and the small to medium sized businesses that the town relies upon with closing the high street. That's my diplomatic way of a civil service way of putting it. Does anyone else want to say anything before we go? Any AOB? Open up to the floor. No, silence is gold. We'll give. Ed gave a shout out to Dom Hyam last week for a new contract. Let's give a shout out to Luke Southwood, because we now give shout outs to Whitney, Oxfordshire-based footballers. He got called up to the Northern Ireland squad. So there we go. We'll keep that trend going. I don't know who's going to be next.
I don't think there's that many we can do this. We're going to have to wait every year until Dom gets a new
We've
contract.
exhausted. Yeah.
that's the maybe gone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think maybe Josh Leafy gets a National Fishmongers award or whatever it is. I don't know. Maybe we'll see next week what the content is in terms of Whitney. Maybe we'll talk about Whitney Snooker Club being changed to Rush or something. Who knows? Who knows? Shambles. Anyway, please shambles. Anyway, please be sure to like and subscribe. And like this video, follow. We'd really appreciate it. We're so close to 50. We're on 44 at the minute. Maybe we'll do a social media post trying to get people to follow and subscribe and stuff because we are so close to 50. Maybe we'll give a shout out to the 50th person or something. If you can prove you're the 50th subscriber, then we'll give you a shout out, and maybe we'll do like what sort of those cameo messages where we'll just do like a video and be like, oh, thanks so and so for subscribing. I don't know. Just throwing out, just spitballing ideas here.
How much are we charging for that cameo from yourself, Tang?
Who knows? Whatever it takes. Well, that's quite steep. When you get some footballers for like 10 quid.
Yeah. I think our shout out on this podcast is about 55p, I think.
Yeah. That included, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much. It's waving goodbye from me, Ash, Jack, and Dan. See you all later this week, I hope. Goodbye.